Welcome. Will India become the leader of the democratic world, I have to say. It's an open section lecture, and it's actually great timing because of a number of reasons. Please come in and find your seat. It's an initiative of Thierry Tartarin. He is the lecturer who came up with the idea. No, it's not, okay? He's there. He came up with the idea for the minor Tomorrow's World, India. And when I first met Thierry, he said, I want, together with students, I want to actually have this question, what can the rest of the world learn from India? Personally, I think this is a very interesting question. My name is Maarten van der Schaaf. I'm one of the partners of India Connected. We have an advisory firm, so we help Dutch companies do business with India. So when someone says, hey, I want to organize something about what can we learn from India, I'm very interested to moderate this. And it's also great timing because next week there will be the trade mission, a large trade mission going to India with, I think, 200 Dutch companies, and even our king and queen are traveling to India. So all in all, great timing, I think. That's for me. I'm interested who is actually in the room. Can I have hands like who has ever been in India? Okay. Who is actually from India? Or from Indian origin? That's also good. Wonderful. Who works with people from India? Okay. Okay. So there's also a lot of people who are relatively new or don't know too much about India. Is this correct? Who says, I know about only the cliches of India? No one dares. Ah. Some people, great. That's very brave. One of the other reasons why we're having this today is that yesterday the former ambassador, Dutch ambassador to India, launched his book. He's been 6 years the ambassador in Delhi. We actually also have another old ambassador in the room, so that's great. All the way on the last row. So great that you're here. And Fons Soelegaan was yesterday in Crea having the book launch. Then he was on the radio. And now it's basically the start of his national tour, I can almost say, of his book. His book is called India. Simply Land van de Toekomst, so Country of the Future. And I'm actually really looking forward to hear your story. Afterwards, he told me already, there's a few books here and as it goes in India, you can only sell something with discount. So here there's a €5 discount for 15 euros, and he will sign it as well. Fons, the floor is yours. I would like to invite you here and give him a warm hand.
I hope it's on the microphone. Look, first of all, I've lived 6 years in India, but originally I'm from Zwolle. And of course, Zwolle, Deventer is on. But I'm very proud of, let's say, our region. You know, I put Zwolle and Deventer together because last week I was at the Non-Violence Day, the Gandhi Day, and there was a delegation from Saxion School, and the students had participated in a wedstrijd, in a competition for the best story about non-violence. And the first prize went to Omar. I see him here. So big applause. He had a very interesting story because he was telling, you know, if in the Middle East they had applied the non-violence of Gandhi, of Mahatma Gandhi, how would the Middle East have looked today? And that was a very interesting, of course, proposition. But also the way he talked about it, he did talk about it without taking any position. So he said, I'm not talking about the content of the problem, only about the process. of the problem. And that, of course, is exactly why sometimes you don't get peace, because people go directly into the content of the conflict. And then, of course, everybody gets stuck, and then you get the situation that you have today. So, Omar, your speech I like the best that day, and so it was right that you won there, and I'm a bit proud of my own Overijssel region, so to say. So, I'm very happy that you turned out in great numbers today. Yesterday also, as was said, in Amsterdam, we had great numbers, because it shows that you are curious about India. Otherwise you have not come. And that touches on the reason why I wrote the book. Because India themselves, they say, incredible India, you know, in all the advertisements for tourism. But I would say it's also invisible India. India is invisible. India is not on the radar screens in Europe. And Europe is not in India, by the way. India is not on the radar screens in the Netherlands. India is invisible. And that is strange. And I've tried to write this book to open the doors to India. Now, I've lived 6 years in India, and I've tried to learn the language, Hindi, the main local language, because I had learned from my ambassadorship in Italy, where nobody almost spoke English, that if you try to speak the local language, you have a better feel for the emotions of the local people. You have a better insight in the trends of the society. And with Hindi, you have a better idea of what kind of people are they, the Indians? What kind of people am I living in? So even when you talk a bit of the local language, you have much more access to everything that is happening there. And with my book, I wanted to share what I won in insights. Why would I keep it in my head and not share it with all the Dutch to open their eyes for India? The second thing that I'm convinced about is that, like I lived 8,000 kilometers from my own country, from my own culture, for a long time, I'm convinced that if you live at a great distance of your own country and culture, that then you get a better sight why things are happening here like they're happening. Like the historian has a better judgment because there is a distance in time, I think also geographical distance from your own region, your own culture, give you a better judgment, a better. So that also I wanted to share with the book. So my book is about India, but through the prisma of India, I also look at the West, what is happening here in the West, and at Europe and at the Netherlands. So that's the reasons of the book. Why a book about India today? 3 reasons. First, we live now, and that is very clear, in a very important time of our history, because some certainties are fading away. In our own country, look at, for example, a fixed job in the Netherlands, or a pension. So, certainties are fading away. Also, geopolitical. In the southeast of Asia, they're wondering, countries like Thailand and Malaysia, are the US going to continue to protect us there? Or is it better to become a bit more friendly with China, because you know they're pushing so much, and sooner or later maybe one way or the other. So, the world political order, as we knew it, and as it started in the end of the 1980s with the fall of the Soviet Union, that world order is coming to an end. China is knocking at the door, and the geopolitical cards will be shuffled again. And also the economic world order, as it started also in the end of the 1980s, with what we call the Washington Consensus between IMF, World Bank, and the Treasury in America. This new world order that introduced liberalization of economies, the market principle, and because of this too, we have globalization today. Also that system is under pressure and is maybe coming to an end. So very interesting point in history is reason one why I write a book now. Second is that also India is on a turning point. It becomes the largest country in population in 2025 and the third world economy by 2030. And for a country like the Netherlands, where 40% of our prosperity is earned with international business, in one way or the other, in any scenario, India will become an important country, whether it is the third economy of the world. And then the third reason why a book today is the most important, because India is a part of the free world. In India, the government is elected by 870 million people. In China, the president is elected by 7 people, the members of the Politburo of the Communist Party. So India is part of the free world. It has a democracy, independent justice, free press. We are also part of the free world. The free world is under pressure. In Asia, it's under pressure because of China. And so it would be very logical if the free countries in the West and free countries everywhere would cooperate. And that is not the case. I'll come back later there. So 3 reasons why the book is relevant, I think, today. Now, what is in the book? I try to show the reader where India came from, what type of people the Indians are, what type of country. For example, how 900 million people vote electronically. Their votes are registered on a hard disk, and the hard disk are transported into the Malaya, into steppes, into deserts, into subtropical areas, to the last Indian, with elephants, donkeys, bikes, and camels. So you have the 2 Indias, the hard disk with your vote being registered, but the transportation is taking place on an elephant. So, and also Indian Railways is something very special. If you go to India, the railways have something like 110 kilometers of rail. It has been built in the British time, in the colonial time. But the British had a special tax and they let the Indian indigenous people pay for that railway. But the railway was used by the British to move their troops. So they needed very little number of troops to keep that whole continent into their power. So actually, the Indians were paying their own colonialism. The extension of the colonial time has been paid by the Indians themselves. So the British had a very cynical way of colonialism, I would say. So my book is also about Hindu nationalism. That becomes a more important force in India politics. And my book is also about lighter things like what makes the Indian tick. When you come in, Bollywood makes them tick. Cricket makes them tick. My big fat Indian wedding of 3 days makes them tick. And the family is everywhere. If you do business with India, you don't know what the Indian family means for them, you cannot do business. I always say, in India, it's not about the contract with the R, it's about the contact without the R. The family, the network, the people. So, now I'm not going into all these details of the book, but I will look at how much time I have. I will treat a few statements that I make, some conclusions in the book about India and about us. Now the first one is about the economy. Half of the population in India is 25 years or younger. The average age in India is 29, in China is 39, in Japan is 49, and in Holland, 42. So it's reasonable. But the Indians are very young. They are very well connected. Only 40% of the Indians have a toilet, but on the 1.3 billion Indians, there are 1.15 billion mobile phones. Everybody, even the beggar in the street, at the traffic light, he can take a telephone, you know. Everybody has a telephone. They have nothing, but the telephone is always there, the mobile. 45% is smart mobile, and that percentage is growing. So they're young, they're well connected, but the most important is the Indians have the beta factor, the science in their DNA. They're good in chess, they're good in algebra, they're good in accountancy, in engineering. All the students and their parents, they want to become engineers. And if that's not possible, then doctor. But per year, every year in India, 500,000 engineers graduate. 500,000. And that factor of the engineer, of the beta factor, combined with the fact that every Indian who counts speaks English, and that is not the case in Japan, and not the case in China, they don't speak English there. So the combination of English speaking and the beta factor gives India an advantage in the times of digitalization, of algorithms, of software. And my first statement today, and in my book, is also that in becoming the 3rd largest economy in the world, India will not go the same path as China. India will not produce consumer goods for the rest of the world? There are many reasons. First, in order to take the decision where to put your production plant, the cost of labor is getting less important. Quality becomes more important. The proximity of the market becomes more important. In my youth, we were talking about robotization. Now robotization takes place. And when robotization is in the factory, and there are not so many jobs, then the cost of jobs, the cost of labor is less important. India has at least 600 million poor who still have to enter the middle class. They have to start consuming. They have nothing. Only the mobile. They all have the mobile, but they have nothing. They will start consuming. So India will produce consumer goods for their own people. And for the rest of the world, because of the English language and the beta factor, they will be the software provider, the data processor, and everything. So this is the first statement. The second is about geopolitics. In 10 years' time, it's not difficult to foresee that. There will be two hard power superpowers in the world. The US, that has been already a superpower, and China, that is, it's impossible to stop them. They will be the two hard power superpowers. With hard power, I mean they have the military power to impose their will on others. But there are also two soft power superpowers, India and the EU. The EU by choice, because we let Americans do it, and now we don't have the capacity. And India, because the first decade of this century, there was so much corruption that the officials were afraid to take decisions. And the infrastructure in India is lagging behind, the infrastructure of the economy, but also the military infrastructure is lagging behind. Now, India and the EU, both will be soft powers, both will be economic superpowers, and both are part of the free world, as I just said, and the EU is the biggest investor in India. So there are many reasons why these two would be looking at each other and working together, and that is not taking place. And that is very strange. Why? Well, the Indians, they like to talk to the individual European countries. They talk to the British. For them, Brexit is not important because they already talked to the British, to the Dutch, to the Germans, to the French. The EU, they see as a kind of United Nations that points to all the shortcomings in India, in the economy, in the society, and everything. And then, when India has a question, for example, Europe, what do you think about India's membership of the Security Council? A very important question for India, because they have 1/6 of the world population and they're not sitting there. And then they'll get 5 different answers from Europe. All these countries think different about it. So, India doesn't have Europe on the radar screen. Europe doesn't have India on the radar screen because we are too busy with ourselves. Brexit, the southern European economies that are not performing, Poland and Hungary that are undermining the independence of the judiciary. Then we are looking around us. I once heard the term ring of fire. North Africa with the migrants, the ISIS in the Middle East, Russia and the Ukraine. We are encircled by a ring of fire, and we don't look over the fire what is happening in the rest of the world. So we are too much concentrated on ourselves in Europe, and that is the reason why we don't see the Indians, and in India, for other reasons, they don't see us. So that is that's a pity, and that's one of the reasons also I wrote a book. Now the third about Hindu nationalism. When Narendra Modi became Prime Minister in 2014, his Hindu nationalist, the Hindu nationalist volunteers of his political party saw that as an occasion, as a chance. They had their Prime Minister now to implement their agenda. And the excesses are known about this. There are innocent citizens, for example, transporting a cow. The cow is holy in India. And they think they are suspected of transporting the cow to the slaughterhouse. Or they are transporting meat. And it's suspected that the meat might be from a cow. The people who transport are mostly Muslims, because a Hindu is not allowed to work with meat in the first place. So the people who transport this cow, who would transport a cow or meat, mostly are Muslims. And there have been many cases where people are lynched because they do that. Just without anything, just lynching by hooligans, I would say. The Prime Minister, I think, should have distanced himself from those practices, which he didn't do, because the same volunteers are very important for his election, because they run a very efficient election campaign. They go from door to door, and if you go from door to door in a country of 1.3 billion, that is quite something. So, this is also happening. Now, how did that work out in the elections? You know, there you have to be very careful, because the press in India, the English language press, is not only the English language press, but it is the press, I think, of the intellectuals, the high government officials, and the enlightened business people. This is 6% of the population. The other hundreds of millions are represented by other media, or are not represented at all. And we take our cue, our news about India is mostly from the English language press. Now they thought that Modi would be pulverized in the elections because of his silence about what happened. And when that didn't happen in April, because he got a landslide victory, something like 62%, they said it is because of Pakistan, the nationalism, that India bombardized terrorist camp in Pakistan as a retaliation against terrorist attack. So I don't believe that Modi has won the elections because of this. It all happened, but I don't believe that he won the election because of that. I read a lot of articles, and I spoke to a lot of people who said the elections he won because of the hundreds of millions of poor. The poor, 600 million, after 70 years of independence, they have left behind for so many years by the elite, by the leading class. And now they feel that something is moving for them. Why? Because the government gives huge tens of billions of money every year to the poor, but half is leaking into the pockets of the politicians, the government officials, and the middlemen. And now this government introduced a system where everybody has a unique ID card that works on your iris and on your fingerprint. And the government said everybody who wants to receive money from support from us has to open a bank account on that ID card. And then you don't get a bag of rice, you get the money to buy a bag of rice. And since they introduced that, there is no leakage anymore. So the poor really feel that something is moving. So I think that the election was won by him because the poor voted for him, and the poor always voted for the Congress Party till now. The Congress Party was really the most socialistic party and always got his votes. Then the economy. You know, in America and in England, in the English language, we always say it's the economy stupid. You say, why is this happening? Or why is that development taking place? And then in the end, you say, it's the economy. It's because of economic reasons. That's what it means. Well, in India, I say it's the informal economy stupid. Why? Modi wanted to reform the economy. In the election campaign in 2014, he said, I'm going to reform the economy. I will create jobs for you. And he was voting, there were not many jobs created, that's a pity. But when he came into power, he saw that 70% of the Indian economy is informal. And that is a euphemism for black. So it means no minimum wage is paid, no taxes are paid, no premium for pensions are being paid, no health coverage paid, nothing. These people are working completely unprotected, 70%, black, not in the statistic. What means a black economy? A black economy is an economy that doesn't work according to the rules. What is economic reform? Economic reform is changing the rules. But if you change the rules, and 70% is not following any rule anyway, your reforms will not have an effect. So for Modi government, there was no other solution than to confront the black economy head on, which he did. He did it with the demonetization, which was very controversial. He took out the high banknotes of 1,000 rupee and 500 rupee. It was very much contested. And they lost at least 1% growth because of that in 2016-17. But the second measure he took was the GST tax. It's a tax, a new tax system, not a new tax, but a new tax system, tax collection system, that has been supported by Infosys, the IT company. We have spoken to these Infosys engineers in Bangalore, and not only is this a tax system for the whole country, which they didn't have, but also it is impossible in this system to evade the taxes. And that, of course, many small traders and retailers didn't like. And this was the original support of Modi. His supporters were always the small traders, the small business people. They were furious with him, and of course, they didn't vote for him this time. The poor voted for him, they didn't vote for him. So, it's very important to see that in a country where you have a big informal economy, where the informal economy is bigger than the formal economy, it's not easy to reform. You have to take the bull by the horns and shake it. Otherwise, nothing will happen. And you are powerless. You can be the prime minister, you can make reforms, you can change the rules, but if nobody follows the rules, it's very difficult. Then, a statement I make about our society, our country, the West, Europe, the Netherlands. If you look at globalization, started in the 80s, in the 90s, and if you have to say what happened because of the globalization, you can say that the prosperity was maybe not better spread over the world, but prosperity was spread over the world. Before it was only the West, rich, prosperous, and the rest not. Now, the West, Asia, parts of Latin America, because of globalization. Most factory jobs were transferred from the West, from Europe, America to Asia. But now, we are entering, or since 7 years I would say, we have entered phase 2 of globalization. Now, Asia competes with us, not only with factory jobs, what we call blue-collar jobs, but also with white-collar jobs. They have good managers, engineers, pilots, accountants, doctors, designers. Good, sometimes better, for 20% of the price. So, what about us? I mean, before we could say, look, the factory jobs we lost, but all the higher levels we still can maintain. Now, of course, we have to continue to increase our productivity on our products so that we can compete on the product level with them. But I think that we have an extra problem. Our societies are aging, pension costs and health costs are going through the roof, and exactly on that moment, the competition from Asia is increasing. So we cannot anymore charge the extra cost of our society, of our welfare state, on our economy, on our economic activity. We will get squeezed between the competition from Asia and the cost of our welfare society in the West. And that is phase 2 of globalization. You see also the split in our society, because the Centraal Planbureau, it's a kind of, I don't know if you know the Centraal Planbureau, they measure the trends in our society, Centraal Planbureau. They measure the trends in the Dutch society. They say the last 6-7 years that the split in political thinking in the Netherlands is not between wealthy and less wealthy people, but between educated and less or non-educated people. The educated people in the globalization, they can go from job to job, from country to country, but the uneducated are stuck. They see also the immigrants coming in and they feel threatened. So, and this is in America you see it, it's really 50-50 in America. That's why Trump is there. And in Britain, that's why they have the Brexit. And in Italy, that's why they had the previous government. It was really an incredible government there. So, the elite, the political elite has not found a solution for that. But I would say phase 1 of globalization spread prosperity over the world in a more equal way. I think phase 2 will also spread poverty over the world. So we are entering a different phase of globalization, because of that we have all these political problems. Now, the last, because time is almost running out, I would say that if you look at the fact that we don't see India, and you look, for example, at important problems that we had. Now look at the euro crisis. I believe that the euro crisis was not only a crisis of the euro, of the currency. It was much deeper. The euro crisis came because we have huge competition from Asia, continuously. And we have to reform continuously. Continuously. The north of Europe does that. Look at our pension system. I know that I'm pensioned now, that my pension would have been 15% higher had they been not reformed. Look at your health cost. Don't look at the cost only of your health every year. The price you pay to the premium every month is always the same, maybe €5 up and down. Look what is covered. It covers less and less. It goes very slowly. So the north of Europe is adapting. In the south of Europe, the party goes on. I was in France last week, and there was a strike of the RATAP in Paris, that's the metro of Paris. It was about pensions. And I asked somebody who worked in the ministry there, I said, but what is the pension of an average metro driver in net in Paris? And he said, €3,500. Well, I don't know what you are very young, you don't know a lot about pensions, but I can say that one of the highest jobs in the Dutch government, if you are director in the Dutch ministry, maybe you have 3,500 net, but not a driver of a tram. So these countries are consuming on debt, the southern European countries. And if this continues, if the north is reforming and staying competitive in relation to Asia, and the south is not, a country like Greece is completely finished. They are not competing in anything, only tourism. I think that on the long term, with having one currency, that will not be possible. Something has to change. Otherwise, I think in the end, maybe we are very rich, we will have €2. €2, one for the north and one for the south. And that is all because of Asia. And that's why Asia is important, and that's why India, a very important part of Asia, is also important. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Fons. Please, you are with us the whole afternoon, so that's wonderful. I heard you talk so passionately about India, and also thinking about the other former Dutch ambassador in the room. It's interesting that both of you are so intrigued and passionate about India, because you wrote a book about India and not about one of the other countries that you've been an ambassador. Thank you so much. I'm curious to hear something from the room, some first remarks, people that say, hey, I still have a question, I want to know something. Can I give the mic to someone? About the pensions in Europe, because it's not, you're not only talking about India, but also so much about your view from Delhi on the Netherlands, what's happening in the West. Which one of the students are actually going to India later on? Anyone who wants something, says like, wants to ask something? This is your chance.
Maybe push too many issues into the...
Maybe even better, I will ask you something. This question that we put out there on the flyer, you say India is part of the free world. India is together with the EU, is a soft power in contrast to the US and to China. Will India become the leader of the democratic world? What do you think?
You know, I don't think so. I think that India as a part of the free world, and we as a part of it, we have to come together. But you know, India also, if it becomes a superpower, it is not because they want to become a superpower. Because look, India gets 1.5 billion people. They need energy, they have no energy. They need the minerals. So when you talk to the Indians, they say, you know, where are you going to get all of that in the world? The Chinese, they have their military capacity, and they get, if you see what they do in Africa, but they have to do it. How do they get all the, they have to feed their economy. India also, but they don't really think like that. They don't think we have to become a superpower because we are so big now that we have to secure our supply lines of everything. So here also, they're not, I don't think that they feel threatened as a democracy or something. So I don't think that they, and also, you know, what plays out always in India is how India started. They started not as a Western country. Yeah? They started more at the side of the former Soviet Union than at the Western side. And this, you know, in the first reactions, that still, when we had a Navy ship visiting Mumbai port, they said, you know, we don't want the ship to come in a NATO mission. It comes as a Dutch ship, not as a NATO. They don't like NATO. So democratic world, NATO, EU, they are a bit...
At the same time, they're very proud to be the largest democracy in the world. And if you see that democracy is under threat, you're actually also mentioning it. You see it in Europe, you see it in many countries. Authoritarian regimes are becoming more dominant. India is proud to be a democracy. The West is looking at other democracies.
Yes.
To what extent this is the largest democracy in the world? Will there be? You don't see this happening. This is something else that is superpower, right?
You know, they are not. You know, India. If you look at the history, also India has not gone out, invaded other countries. They were always there. They were invaded by the Aryans, and then by the Mongols, and then by the British. So they are not. And also, you know, they don't want you, the EU, to interfere in their interior affairs because they don't want to interfere. Their policy is always, we don't want to interfere in other countries. So if you do, if you say, look, your thing there with child labor, they don't like that. And that's also what I say in my book. In India, you should not point out what is wrong. Of course there are things wrong. Most times the laws are okay, but the laws are not obeyed. Because of that there is a discrimination of the caste. Because of that the position of the woman is terrible in India. And because of that there is still child labor when it is forbidden. So you should help them in having the laws being obeyed. That is much better spending your money on them, helping them, than on only criticizing and but themselves.
So India needs help also to become even a more functioning democracy.
Yes,
is that also what you say?
Yeah, that they need help. And you know, I think also in other countries they would say, look, they are democratic, but look at the fact that there are 600 million poor. Okay, human rights are human rights, but if 100 million people have no food, then there is also a problem. So that's also a human right to have food. And since independence, and since 1990, the economy is growing with 7%. So why are there still 100 million people not? So they are democratic, but there are also some question marks there. And then, but they would not search for that position. They would not.
They might become it, although they don't even want to become it. Is that right?
They are not. There is not a strategy to become a leader or something of something. Of the free world, of the democratic world, or a superpower. They're not, if they had been working for that, they should have an army at least 3 times bigger than what they have now. There's nothing what they have. Really nothing.
Maybe another question that's also integral to the minor program here, Tomorrow's World, India. What can the world learn from India?
In economics or policies?
What can the world learn from India? You can fill it in yourself. There's many, like here at Saxion, they focus on technology, economy, on the societal aspects, on also, of course, democracy, living together with so many religions and cultures. What can the world learn from India?
Well, you know, one thing that I've only found in India is the resilience of the people. Not of the country itself, but of the people. Once in 2016, you know, New Delhi has 23 million people. 23 million. Part of the water, drinking water for 5 million people comes from a state, federal state next door, Haryana. Now there were protests in Haryana. There was a caste of landowners and they were not the lowest caste, so they didn't get any support from the government, because low caste get all kind of quota and reservations, and they didn't get it. They wanted to get it, they didn't get it. They were burning cars, put fire to houses, and then they blew up the canal that brings water to New Delhi for 5 million people. They did it in the month of May, when in the shadow it's 48 degrees. So 5 million people in the capital of the country were 3 weeks without drinking water. Now, in any other country, that would have caused a lot of problems for the politicians, for order in the city, for safety, for health, for anything. And in India, it was on the 3rd page of the newspaper, and I heard that, you know, guys on small bikes with buckets of water were selling water for 100 times the price. And the problem was the Indians are very resilient, and also they have learned not to blame others. Many times they blame themselves and say, I'm living in the wrong part of the city, I should never have lived here. So it's very, so if you see how quick we in our countries blame the government, and everything has to be done by the government, and you see that in our countries, because of the pressure, the economic pressure from the outside, the government can do less. In healthcare now, we say to the family, you know, you do it. Bejaardenhuizen, old people homes, you stay at home. The neighborhood, family. So our government will not be able anymore in the future to do everything what it does now for its people. So we can learn from India as individuals, from the Indians, to be a bit more self-sufficient and to take care of yourself. And that is what will happen, I think, also with the pension system. The pension system as it is in the Netherlands and in the West is not sustainable. The new pension system, I'm sure that is going to be introduced here also. Everybody will get his own little savings in the pension system, and that's, so you will become more responsible and more self-sufficient, and that is something what we can learn from the Indians.
That's a beautiful answer, I think. I would like to ask one of the Indian guys here in the room, in this corner. Do you recognize what Mr. Stoelinga is saying about resilience, about sorting it out somehow? Even this water crisis, this example, pretty extreme. Can I give the mic to one of you?
I didn't get your questions actually.
This resilience that the former investor is talking about, is this something that you recognize among your life when you were living there, or is this something that you think is not so much the case, that Indians do actually protest and go out?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. I'll keep it, please.
Okay, I will give one example.
Yeah.
In last 6 months, there are flood in Maharashtra region, Maharashtra state, in
Yeah.
all of the region.
Floods.
Flood, lot of broad floods.
Floods.
Lot of rains.
Yeah.
And there was a situation that there are a lot of people that have to migrate from their own state to another local areas.
Yeah.
So there are peoples. They are helping to migrate the peoples because they are helping to foods,
Yeah.
to transport all these transport facilities.
Yeah.
And now I think that India is changing because you can see that in Gram Panchayat level, means Panchayat levels, there are 33% reservation for women.
Yeah, for women.
Women.
In the
They
Pasha.
are doing women
In the villages. In the
Yes,
village governments, they have now 35%,
33%.
33%
33%.
for
Yes.
women.
Yes, they are
Yeah.
reserved for women.
Yeah.
And again, that thing is that in India, you see, we cannot control all the population because we have 1.3 billion in here.
Yeah, it's impossible.
It is impossible. So
Yeah.
we need change. We need time to
Yeah.
change. So it is basically from we can start from basic. So if you see first if you see Prime Minister Modi what did first is they started the cleaning
Yes.
in India.
Yeah.
So from we want to change from basics.
Yeah.
So I think within 10 to 15 years will change and
It will change.
will become the.
So you also say that Indians are also patient.
Yes.
Is that true? Is maybe that's also something we can learn from India.
Yeah, yeah. True. Yeah.
I have one more question here. Now the questions are coming, so the panelists still have to wait for a little bit. Sir.
What we can learn is exactly what you said. This thing.
Yeah.
The beta subjects.
Yeah.
It was
more attention for
it was Amartya Sen who said in the New Yorker, the best choice I made is from the beginning of my university and my schools. I followed beta subjects, and that made me understand how the world works. And that's what we are not doing anymore.
No. Look,
Wonderful, thank you.
I'm an ambassador, but I studied for engineer. So engineer who became, and engineers, I must say, it's true, they think in a certain engineer way, but it's dangerous to say because we are not most engineers here.
There might be. I have one more question here.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Okay. Even though I look like brown and with beard, I'm not from India though. I'm an international student here. I'm originally from Bangladesh. First of all, I would like to congratulate my Indian colleagues sitting over there because within the 70 years of their independence from the British, they have actually gained unbelievable success. They even sent a rocket to the moon recently. So we have to appreciate on their success. But I'd like to tell a story to my fellow colleagues sitting in this room, the Dutch people, the European people. Imagine living in a place where there is no internet, there is no telephone line, not even the landlines. There is your journalist, there is no journalist, there is no newspaper. Your political leaders, so the people you vote for, you elected, they are put in jail, they are under house arrest, and your kids are being shot with pellet bullets, not regular bullets, like it will not poke one hole in your heart, but it will spread all over your body, into your eyes, into your face, and if you protest, they will tie you in front of a military vehicle and drive you to a wall. How do you feel about that? And what I'm talking about the story, it's not a story of, let's say, some Soviet era atrocity that has happened 50 years ago, 60 years ago. It is happening right now at this moment in Kashmir. It has been under blockade for the last 60 days and nobody is saying anything about it. Nobody is taking any step against about it. So
if you're saying democracy, you're not agreeing with this, are you?
Absolutely not, sir. Because if democracy is only about how many people votes in an election, then we do not want the democracy. Democracy should be protecting human right and freedom of speech. Where is protection and freedom for the Kashmiri people? That's my question to anyone who would like to defend India in this platform.
I'm curious to hear, thank you for your remark. I'm curious to hear, Mr. Studenga, what you have to think about this. You said already there's a few remarks, few points to be made about India and democracy. So.
Look, the first is, if you look at Freedom House, there is an American in Washington, the NGO, Freedom House. It was started by the wife of Roosevelt, Eleanor Roosevelt. And they mention, they have the map of Asia colored, every country that is free is blue, completely blue. And then less blue is less free. India is blue except for Kashmir. Kashmir has a slightly different color together with all of Pakistan. So the freedom in India, except for Pakistan, is regarded as completely free. Like Japan, South Korea, India plus Mongolia, completely free. Kashmir of India plus Kashmir of Pakistan plus the rest of Pakistan is considered less. Not completely not free, but much less. Now, if you start to think about Kashmir, how it started, it's a bit, maybe difficult to go in all the details of Kashmir, how it started. But
let's not do that.
No, let's not do that. I only go 20 years back, and there have been efforts by Indian Prime Ministers, Vajpayee had gone to Karachi to meet his counterpart, Musharraf, the president of Pakistan, to try to solve, of course, the Kashmir problem. 1 month afterwards, the troops came into India and they had a war. Now, Modi went in 2015 to the marriage of the son of Sharif, also to establish contact at least. 2 weeks afterwards, they had one of the most terrible terrorist attacks. So the problem is that India doesn't know with whom to negotiate, because if you negotiate with the Prime Minister of Pakistan, he's not the one who decides. The army and the security services, they decide. And then, the last 6-7 years, there are 2 other factors. The first factor is that India's problem, as they see it, is of course Pakistan, but also China. China has North Korea at the moment as a nuisance factor for Japan and South Korea. Every time that Japan and South Korea move a bit, they push the North Korea bottom. So I don't believe that China has no power over North Korea. It's a joke. So, but now we go back to Kashmir and Pakistan. China is increasingly seeing Pakistan as the button of the Chinese. That every time that India is doing something and moving, they push the Pakistan button. So
you argue that
yeah,
Kashmir is an international issue.
It's becoming unsolvable. And as a third development, why they cannot solve it anymore, and why the whole public in India is now agrees with what this government is doing, and that is that the stand of the rebels there in the people who are for autonomy of Kashmir is not anymore pro-Kashmir, it's now anti-India. And that, I think, because of that, there is no support anymore in the rest of India, and they yes. And then, of course, look, the thing is that what is happening there, what you said, that shooting with how we call it, plastic bullets to pallets to people, this is all excesses, I think, and they should not. The army is allowed to do this by. The government allows the Indian government allows the army to do that, and that is not correct. That is true.
So okay, let's because I see also some other hands in the audience about Kashmir, but I would not like to go into this too deeply. I think his point is made there. I would say that India is then, especially in the case of Kashmir, a troubled democracy.
Yes.
And I would like to move on because we have 2 panelists sitting here, and I would really like to introduce you. Fons, please have a seat there. I start with Mr. Rob Sidanian. Mr. Pramod Agarwal. Please have a seat, gentlemen. Yeah, please have a seat. Fons, if you want, please keep us, join us.
You said India and Europe has to do together.
Yes.
If you sit at that round table, these gentlemen sit here on this table. Next to me is Pramod Agarwal. He's an entrepreneur, researcher in biotech and textiles. He holds a PhD at the University of Twente, so he's been here for a long time actually. He's a member of the steering committee of the Indian diaspora, and finally he's the vice president of the Foundation for Critical Choices for India. This is the oldest think tank about India outside India. Is that correct? What kind of critical choices does India have to make in the upcoming years? You get a mic.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming in large numbers. Now I speak as a foundation member or foundation vice president. You see, the critical issues for India keep changing. We started this foundation in 1980, and that was the oldest think tank of overseas Indian anywhere in the world. And now imagine that happened in the Netherlands. And next year we are going to celebrate the 40th anniversary of our foundation. And since 1980, we start talking about, could we have issues of simple issues like the Punjab problem or Northeast problem or even simple as solid waste management in India or simple water management, because these are the sectors where Netherlands always did very good, and there is always something to learn from this country, where both countries can mutually benefit from each other. But when I have to draw and foresee what are the topics for us in next 5 to 10 years, then I think the topics such as cooperation in water sector. Last year we had a flood in Kerala, and the recent ambassador to India, from India to Netherlands, has written a book on it. And sustainable farming, how you can reduce the pesticides, because 1/4 of the world pesticide is sprinkled on cotton, and you know, it's also going into the water and then to the land, and the cancer belts across Punjab are coming, for example. Smart cities, carbon neutral cities, fostering breakthrough innovation. So these are the topics which we are handling actively. At this moment, I would like to mention 2 very critical and important topics for India, and those are mobility of skills, because I think Mr. Ambassador has already put some light on it, but India is the youngest country in the world, with half of its population less than 25, with an average age of 29, and it produced 500,000 beta graduates, like engineers. But when you look at in numbers, Europe as a whole, by 2050, if I'm not wrong, according to some reports, we would have 56 million less people, working class, in whole Europe. So if Europe has to maintain its competitive position, being a knowledge economy, they would certainly need lots and lots of robots or a skilled people. And I'm not advocating here a planned migration and something like that. I think there is a very beautiful word, and I see someone laughing behind, smiling behind, and it could be a structured skill mobility. And that could also be the basis for the Indo-European cooperation. Because when you look at Netherlands, at this moment, we have, if I'm not wrong, around 1 million job vacancies in the area of Zorg, ICT, teaching, science, technology, industry, you name it, basically. But I'm not talking about that we need 1 million people and start living here. What I'm talking about is, what do you need? You can also shop it, you know, in a way. But these people who are sitting there with certain knowledge and skill set, which is theoretical or practical, but they also need to have a right match between what we need and what they can offer. That means there is also enormous scope for a lot of people sitting in this room to act as a key trainer, to see how and what you need to train them to be able to serve your old people in this country, possibly, or to run your ABN AMRO banks and Rabobanks and NS and their software system behind. And that is very crucial. And I think that sort of cooperation is you know, where you talk about, because at the basis of India, we don't say about land, we say in Sanskrit, Vasudev Kutumbam. That means this earth is one small village. And when you talk about a free movement for the skilled people, which could mutually benefit from each other, I think that is very, very crucial. We have on board Utrecht province. Last year in December, we had a big conference in Provincie Hall, sponsored by the Provincie Hall, where they said that we want to increase the efficiency and the competitiveness of our own worker, and we want that special thing. And that is that sort of project going on, not only at Dutch level, but we are also trying to reach a lot of European partners. The second, and which is very, very crucial, I think, is Indo-Europe cooperation is critical at this time of the period. Because I think you already put a lot of light on the USA. In past, we had a Cold War, USA had a Cold War with Russia, let's say, or USSR. And now it's a tussle between China and USA. But when you look at it, USA is out of Paris Agreement. They don't talk about global warming or climate change. They put Europe in difficult position when it comes to nuclear policy on Iran, for example. And they try to use their soft power always for their benefit in general. But when you look at China, on the other hand, and the pace it is growing, it has all the capacity to be superpower to replace USA. But it's not a democratic country. It's elected by the 7 people. And even they issued a law that the person who has been elected now could be perpetually be there for a long time. And when you look at this artificial islands and this one belt policy which is going around, you see that it's bit not in a true democratic way. But when you look at the data, for example, we are talking about 3G and now 4G. But have you imagined what happens when 5G comes? The amount of data it can handle. It could be even threat to the lot of very sensitive data and information which can go outside your home computer, but also outside your country. It's not about just you who are watched, but it could be all the sensitive ministries and the department. And it's very, very important. But when you look at the tech giants in America and China, in fact, they are controlling most of this data at this moment. So I think there need to be, I would use a word of neutral cooperation for market and technology between Europe and India. And I think this is a very, very critical topic. And we have to take that lead there. And can we form a natural cooperation where we could create this sort of platforms where we could deal with this sort of sensitive data, that it doesn't go out of the country and things like that. So these are some of the critical issues I could list on.
So Pramod, this is a critical issue, you say, for India, but also for Europe.
Exactly. So I'm trying to, because I'm sitting here, so I think let's talk about both. That's why I asked you to be here as well, and not just me, I think. And that's the basis of India in general. I think India being a land of Buddha and Gandhi, they would never want it to be superpower. They would never want it to be the leader, but they wanted to be one of the several front runners when it comes to democratic value. You see, you have to understand one thing, really. When India got independence 72 years before, it got independence midnight, suddenly. All the people constitutionally got equal right, suddenly, on a stroke. You know what was the literacy rate on that day? It was 70%. 1-7.
You know your numbers.
Yes, but now imagine, despite all those challenges and hunger and poverty, and despite that, India being a resilient society, managed to be democratic for 72 years, except for the small patch we had in between. But we grow over it, When you look at the statistics, we had a Sikh Prime Minister. Sikh represents 1.7% of the population. We had a Muslim president. We had a first female Prime Minister anywhere. And now a tea seller is a Prime Minister. What else you want to show that it's a democratic country in a way? But I would also like to reply to your answer, Mr. When it comes to Kashmir in general. It's a special and it's a temporary situation. This is a real pain for last 72 years, I would say, between the neighbors. And we have a pretty disturbing neighbor, I would say, in this case. The situation is, when Britishers left India, what they said is, there is no India. We have a contract with 565 princely states, and we are going to end these contracts with them. Full stop. And we are leaving. Bye. But all princely states had an equal right to decide whether they want to go with India, or to go with Pakistan, or to stay neutral. And I must say here, in this podium, that the Maharaja of Kashmir, Jammu and Ladakh, who was the legal heir, he decided to stay neutral for a long time. On 15th August 1947, Jammu Kashmir was not part of India, by the way. The day, somewhere on 22nd October, if I'm not wrong, Pakistan army started invading part of Jammu and Kashmir, and they were only 25 kilometers away from Jammu, Srinagar as a capital. And then Maharaja called, please help me, please save us. And then Lord Mountbatten, he was the governor, he was still there. And then Nehru and our home minister asked, should we send a troop? They said, but who are we? Why we should send a troop to Jammu and Kashmir? They are not part of India, we cannot send troop there. They say, unless and until he signs that he signed an agreement to join India legally, we cannot defend it because it's an independent territory. He came all the way to Delhi, he signed a contract, it's a legal territory, basically. So, but still, despite that, 1/3 of the Kashmir is with Pakistan. And then, Kashmir got that special status of 370, And recently, Indian government has removed it. He said, simple, it's stupid, because of that there is no development, people cannot integrate with each other, and we have to get rid of this situation, which they are trying to do. And I think this is a very special situation, and we have to deal it in that way. But if everyone treat it nicely, and our neighbor understand this situation, I think it will be a democratic solution.
Thank you for this historian perspective, because it does matter, of course. I really, gentlemen,
it's a very emotional issue.
I ask you to, if you want to continue the Kashmir discussion, it's a wonderful, beautiful, emotional discussion, and I understand this fully. Afterwards, we have a nice bowl, and that's the place for discussions about war zones. And undemocratic area. So I want to, because there's a lovely gentleman sitting also here in the middle, and I also want to introduce him to you, Mr. Ropsi Taldin. He's a Hindu priest, a philosopher in that order, and then for a long time nothing, and then management consultant. That's I think what I more or less understood. He's a member also of the Foundation for Critical Choices for India, and often engages in the public debate with his writings. And yesterday when we were on the phone, you said something interesting. You said philosophy needs to be practical, needs to be useful. So I'm interested to hear from you. Can you give an example of how Hindu philosophy can be used in the modern world, and especially with the perspective of this leadership in democracy?
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, my fluency in English is not so like as from him or from you, but please translate for me, okay? Okay, so, okay. As I said to the Honorable Ambassador, that when he asked me that, what will you say? I said, I will just interact on what I will hear. That I have also told you yesterday, that there is no preparation, need for this, because I do not know what will present it. And so I will do now on this moment. Okay, the democratic point. You can't be that. You can't sustain something when you do not have that in you. And the democratic values, they are inherent in the Indian thinking, in the way of living. What the politicians has made of is that the second point. With the Russians and all those things, the non-democratic things. But the Indian society, the Indian thinking is too old for this, what the politicians have done now with this. And the democratic thinking is inherent in the Indian way of living, in the Indian philosophy. It is defined in the scriptures like the Vedas, the 4 Vedas, you have the Upanishads, the Shastras, the Puranas. They have...
For the people who don't know,
yes, I will tell you, that are the basic scriptures, the scriptures of the Hindu philosophy. In the Christianity, you do have the Bible as the main script, and with Islam, the Quran, but the Hindus has thousands of scriptures. Thousands, if you like, the thousands of source of so-called gods. I've spoken about that in the opening lecture. Okay, and then there is a very big freedom in thinking that is described so. And to explain that, you have in the Purans many myths that the rishis has prepared to let the common person understand that, all the myths. And one is in the Ramayana, maybe you have heard about the Ramayana from Ram Sita. That's thousands of years ago, such thing must have happened or is written, that there was the king Ram, and he was the incarnation of God. But during his kingdom, there were some gossips about his wife, about the queen. And because of these gossips, the people, they were not accepting such a queen. And King Ram, he abandoned his wife. He sent her to the forest? Where is she? Why is this? It has a message. Yeah? Those myths. Always I say, you must think about the value about it, and not just the myth. It is that he said that I am a servant of the people as king. I am not the ruler. The people rules, and not me. The king is not ruling, and that's the great democratic value in this.
So how old is this scripture you're talking
that
about?
That is thousands of years. I mean, this the story, yeah?
Yeah,
thousands of years ago. But the oldest scripture in this, the Veda, that is that is written about 1200 BC, before Christ, is scientifically the oldest literature of mankind, the Rig Veda. Okay, Rig Veda. It was about 2,500 years before Christ. Then it was how you call it?
Published, written.
No, it was created 2,500 years before Christ, but it was written about 1,200 years before Christ. And the Ramayana, this is the story, this that tells about this. Okay, and then there is one of the values of democracy that he said, "I'm not the ruler; the people rules." Secondly, in the Mahabharata, maybe you've heard of Mahabharata. The name India has also the name Bharat. Bharat. India has a second name, Bharat. And Bharat comes from the one king, Bharat. Why? Because there was the custom, that the eldest son, he will be the king, the new king, always. But this king, Bharat, he decided that he didn't appointed his son as his heir. But he said, no, I need someone who is worthy to become king, and not because he is my son. And so he had chosen just a person out of the people who was worthy for this job to become king. So he broke with the system, the custom.
So those are basically two wonderful questions about very old stories, in which you basically argue that India is inherently, from its philosophy, from Hindu philosophy, has democratic values.
Precisely.
Right?
That's right.
And how do we see this? How do we see this today in Indian society?
No, that is the big difference, and that is not also about this, but on on other big topics, like from the FCCI, we have that by Jamuniji written a very good letter to the Minister of India about the position of women in India, and that there's a discrepancy in Netherlands between what the philosophy said and what is the practice. In that case, let's say we have in the philosophy a very elevated, a very high position of the woman in our religion, but because of the misinterpretation of the scriptures and because of the benefit of the rulers, of the politicians, they give their own interpretation and now putting away all these great values. Let's see, just want to look this in the leading the world in this sense that India has all those values. In my thinking, there must be a revival of the awareness that India has all these great values. Let's see about today we have the Ekadasi Vrat. It's a fasting day. Okay.
Today in India?
Yeah, no, over.
You have not been eating what are you saying?
All the world, all the Hindus. And now then there's a myth. Because the rishis created the myth to let the common people do those things, follow those things. They said, listen, on the 11th day of the month, all the sins of the world will concentrate in grain. So if you will eat today, then you will consume all the sins. Just please do not eat. And why they did it? Because to have more food left for other persons. You see? And imagine 1.4 billion people. And when 20% will fast on this day today, how many kilos of rice and food you will have now saved for others. You see, this is the economic result of that, I've argued once. And so, they, in India, also this thinking to let the world see how you must behave to the nature, they said, listen, okay, just, you know, what is coming up in my mind, I'm just telling that, and that is better than to pray. They said, okay, what was this one? Yes, they said that, how much you must take from the nature. How much you must take from the nature. And that is in our the Smriti, in Manu Smriti, there's written this Shastra, how you must take. You must take just on that way is written. And if the Western world will follow this, then we will have a very good balance and tool in the world. They say you must take at that way, on the way a bee, a honey bee, takes the honey from out the flower without harming the flower. And what the honey bee takes, and what is left, what he takes more than he needs, that is for the society that we are using. The honey bee takes the honey, he uses, we use it without harming the flower. So we must behave with the nature is the philosophy also from the Indian.
Thanks for sharing again this beautiful story. I want to get back shortly to Fons Stuhlenga, because I wonder, when also dealing as an ambassador with the Indian government, what did you get from all these stories of these values? Were they very much present? Were they used also, like what Rob Stadden is sharing with us? And to what extent has it been very differently from other countries? Like in Italy, I know Indians like to have these stories and to express themselves. And
yeah.
Libya have a very good example.
But please.
You have a good example?
Yes.
You?
Yes.
Ah, okay. Then I can
You're safe, you can think, yeah.
Sorry, but I think I could connect it very well, because what Gandhi said is the world has enough to supply supply the need of every individual, but it doesn't have enough to supply the greed of one person. Because if you are too greedy, there's never enough. But if they are, but otherwise the world has enough. And I think that little bit relates to his story that you can take things without harming Mother Nature, and it still can feed everyone. And I think that philosophy could connect a little bit. Maybe in that sense.
Yeah, but in day-to-day, let's say, contacts with the Indian government or with Indian companies, it's just very business-like. You don't feel a lot of this transpiring into that. And for example, well, you said about fasting and about winning 20% of food, and how much that is if you count all food in India as being consumed. But we are talking with the Indian government about the fact that they want to double their food production. And we said, we have the technologies. The Netherlands has less inhabitants than the capital of India, which has 23 million people. But we are the second largest exporter of agricultural products. So if we have the technologies, the Indians lose every day 35% of all their food between the farmer and the table of the consumer, because they don't have cooling systems. The potato, a very simple thing. The potato is harvested in such a way, they take the potato, put it in a bag, it goes to the market, they turn the bag, it goes on a stone, then into a carton, they turn the carton to a second carton, third carton. By the time the potato arrives at the potato chips factory, 35% cannot be used because it's black in the potato chip and nobody wants it. So, we have the technology, we tell them we can save 35% of your food. So there are very business-like discussions with
So very pragmatic, actually.
Yes.
And where do these two lines? Because I see two lines in what is presented here. Like Fons, you're really presenting like the pragmatic Indian needs, and the needs that need to be fulfilled, and 600 million people not having enough to eat.
Yeah.
And at the same time, there's these values of democracy and these beautiful stories.
Yeah.
Where do these two stories meet each other?
Culture. Let's say, for example, where I noticed was when our Prime Minister was going to visit India. When they had decided that it would be somewhere in June 2017, May, June 2017, then the Dutch, the ministry of our Prime Minister was pushing for a date. They said, what's date? Because we cannot keep the whole month of May open for Prime Minister Rutte, he's too busy. And then the Indians said to us, but what's the hurry? I mean, it's better to leave it open till the end and you are flexible. I said, yeah, but my people, they say they want a date because our Prime Minister has only some slots. So there is continuously this kind of culture you meet in the business. And, of course, what I said before is what doesn't count as the contract. You can go to India, sign a contract, and nothing is happening. Or you go to India, you have a good contact with the owner of the company. You go to the marriage of his daughter or his son. You come all the way from Holland to the marriage of the daughter or the son, and you're done. You don't even need a contract. The business starts flowing from there. This is something of our Western culture, that everything has been written and everything has been done today. And if we design this, we have to know exactly the hour in 6 months. It doesn't go like that. And you know, I've
interesting.
I've served in many African countries, and now in the end in India. And you know, in African countries, many times you think, well, it happens. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. In the end, it didn't happen. In India also, many times with this Prime Minister coming, and whatever contract has to be signed, you say, oh my God, it's not going to happen. And again you try, again you try, again you try, again you try. In the end it happens. So India...
What this gentleman said here, patience is important.
Yeah.
Rob, please.
Okay. One thing you must realize also is that the duality in India, that once, on the one hand, that as you said, the cow is so holy, but India is also the biggest exporter of beef.
Yes.
You see? And that is also a reflection of the value of the democracy thinking. Eh? That is because India, it is how you can you have the freedom, and that is one very important effect of this, to think free. That okay, in the cow is so holy, but this happens also. Okay, but one thing more. What is that about the thinking of India? And now, as an economist, if you all the management systems now it is a high. That you will hear about agile, to be agile.
Agile.
Agile, yeah. Okay. Okay, this is the wendbaarheid. That you must be agile. And this comes from, and I've shown for some companies like Boskalis and Shell, that it is based on the Indian philosophy, that to be flexible, to be the elasticity in thinking, to not be attached. Only when you have this wendbaarheid, when you can be agile, when you are not attached. And that is the philosophy of India. Not be attached. You see, and this is now ruling the whole management world on this moment, because every company must be agile. They are agile officers. How to be that? How we cannot be attached in economic system, and that is from the Bhagavad Gita, the Gita from Krishna. You have heard maybe about it. There is that written, that not be attached. And so I can go on this further, but please.
I also want to ask the room, people in the room.
And that I like, the interactive, and then that is better. Yes.
I go to that, so I'm curious to hear from the room, and I'll take this microphone. I see people standing up there.
Thank you. I have a question for Mr. Agarwal. Suppose you're going to meet tomorrow, say, Frans Timmermans. What would you ask from him, and what do you want him to ask from you?
Fuji.
Indians also have humor, as you know. So,
you can take the mic in the middle, just.
This one here. Okay, this. Okay, there's a mic here also, so. Frans Timmermans, the Dutch EU commissioner.
Okay, thank you. Look, you see, I'm also detached a little bit here. I think there is a tremendous opportunity for cooperation between Europe and India. And as Mr. Fong said, that India probably look towards EU as a fragmented countries, like Netherlands or UK or Germany and so on. But I think we have to talk more as a India-Europe. And I think we need more people to say that this is the right partnership. And what I feel, and I think that is the real heart of the crust, is there are not enough people who either aware about this potential, or they are not even people in policy making who are pro-India. I tell you one very good statistics. After 31st October, when Brexit is really, I hope, happen, then we have, but after that day, Netherlands will have the largest Indian diaspora in whole Europe. There are 200,000 approximately Indian or Indian origin people in this country, which is higher than Germany, France, Italy, anywhere in Europe.
What is these people higher?
Also because of Suriname, but they come from that area as well. But when you look at these people, they are not there. I mean, they are there, but they are not there. So it's like a sugar in a coffee or tea or milk, whatever you call it, you know, because they stick to their job, they do what they are supposed to do, and they are not or less interested in policy or policy making. But when you look at other minorities or other communities, there are sufficient representation in the parliament. There are enough cabinet members, there are enough mayors or deputy mayors in position or weight houses.
The Indian Abu Talib, where is he? In the Netherlands.
The only person I know was a deputy mayor of Den Haag, Rabin Baldev Singh, and he's retired now. So what I mean is, there is a very much need of young people to take this policy role. And it doesn't matter which party they believe in, which party they support, but as long as they come a little bit up and they say, oh, now I know Netherlands, I lived here, I understand the country, I understand the culture, I can speak. And I think this is a mutual benefit for both. And I think these people should come more on ladder. And it could take maybe 10 years, I don't know. But this has to happen. And the moment this will happen, automatically India will come to front.
Do you see this happening, for example, in the US, where there's also many Indians? Do you know of Indians in governing positions in the US?
There are some countries where
Indian
origin people even are president and the prime minister, especially in Fiji and Mauritius and those sort of, wherever they went as a migrant. India is the largest migrant country in a way that they have 30 million people of India living outside India, sending the biggest remittances to India. That's the largest source of foreign currency in India they have. But these people are almost always stick to their jobs and they do what they're supposed to do. But I think, and with that mission we started Indian Diaspora Raat, and you know there are 700 Stichting Foundation organization of Indian people in the Netherlands. You know?
700.
This is 700. And we started this umbrella organization where we said, look guys, we have to promote and make people visible that we are around, and we can really help these two countries to work together, or these two continents even, if we call India as a continent, to work and prosper together, because we have to develop this natural cooperation where we talk about support the democratic ethos, and we use this each other's learning from to make a better world possibly for each other.
Thank you. Any other questions in the room?
How many percent of India is religious?
How many percent? What is the percentage of religious people in India? Anyone, gentlemen? Fons, you're good with numbers.
Officially, 80% of India is Hindu. But the point is that, yeah, what is religious? If you practice it or not, that's another point, you see? That's why you have to find how you will answer this. But obviously, yes, that is it. And that's why I am focusing in my lectures also, when I am speaking about the Indian way of thinking about leadership on the Hinduism. Not because I am a Hindu, because that's 80% officially from India. And that's the most what you will have. Because
20 is Muslim. 20.
Yeah, 20 is Muslim. Yeah, about that. And because the first, what you will see there when you come, you will hear Namaste. So I started all the college with these beautiful students here. So that's the answer on this one. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I have a question for the spiritual leader, because you are saying that it's a value that women and men are equal. So can you tell me, are the spiritual leaders actually trying to get the society more equal for women? What are they doing?
Yes, there are some different thinkings. In the old thinking, then that is so. It is, in fact, what I have said and what is written also in our letter to the minister, that it is the point is the interpretation of the scriptures, of the religious scriptures. It's just because of the benefit, because of the old thinking, they have put the woman away on this way. But now, instead of today is the 11th day, this is what he said, the day of the fasting. But 2 days before, we have ended a 9 days period, a holy period, the Navratri in Hinduism. And that is every day the worshipping of God in the personification of a woman. Just expressing that all our mean or our necessary aspects of our life is given by a higher power, and now symbolized in a woman figure, expressing that the woman has a higher position in our thinking than the man. But that is the philosophy. And how they are doing the practice, that's the big problem in India. What I said, the duality, that they are preaching the same priest, the same pandit. On the moment that he is on the microphone, he will say, everyone is equal. And that is our philosophy saying. I have explained that, that all our, the force what is speaking now, the force that is listening now, is, that the philosophy said, is from origin from one source, the creative power. So everyone is equal. And that you will hear also from them. But on the moment that they are out of the microphone, then they are practicing a full other policy that no, a woman cannot do this, or a woman is less, etc., etc. And that must be overcome. That must be changed. And I said that for that you need in India a mind shift. Without that you will not reach that. Because you can have, I know professors, great scientists, they are also thinking in this way that no, I'm from a higher caste, and the woman is lower, etc. So the change must be there.
Fons, have you seen any of this change happening with regard to the women issue? Because of the students also will be...
Oh yeah, you can
use that. Because
you know what you see is, look, like I said, the position of the woman in Indian society is very different. If you look today, it's forbidden for a woman that is pregnant to take an echo, because you might see what the sex of the fetus is. Because they're afraid, the government is afraid that if they know, they take away the girl fetus and they leave the boy fetus. So in some states in India, the relation between boys being born and girls being born is 1,000 to 900. 900 girls and 1,000 boys. And sometimes even worse. It's not getting better.
Yes,
so I haven't seen the religious coming out and pointing to this.
That's the point.
So what is changing in India is just because there is civil society, women are getting educated, they're getting empowered by the education, and they're getting a voice because they organize and they push the courts to take decisions. There was an example now of a temple. Can you imagine? It was a temple, not a government building, a temple where women that were menstruating were not welcome and were forbidden to come. And women pushed through a court a decision that they had to enter. Same with rape. India has a problem now well, has a problem. Many countries have a problem with rape, but in India they have noticed to women that rape has a connection with alcohol. When a man is under the influence of alcohol, then rape is taking place, there's more chance of it. So they started a whole campaign through civil society, women did that, and forced legislation through the parliament on alcohol misuse. So I think that in India the changes have to come from the women themselves. They do it. They get educated now, like the boys, the girls are getting educated. They get a voice because they're standing up, not for being treated equally as a man, but for their own identity as a woman. Why should a man cannot be 100% equally to a woman, and a woman not in the capacity, the way they think, in the way their emotions and everything, but they are demanding the position as a woman, like the man has a position in the society everywhere in the world. They want for the woman a position in Indian society, and they are doing it themselves.
And you see this changing?
Yes,
so
but millimeter by millimeter.
The patience again of this gentleman, what he was mentioning early, like millimeter by millimeter, right?
But in this, I think it will be very difficult, okay, because of the Hindu nationalism. Okay, again, I am a Hindu family, but because of the Hindu nationalism, the force of Mr. Modi, and a large part of the Hindu nationalism, with what I do not agree, is that about this discrimination, and they are in favor of the discrimination. And so it will have many walls to break. It will be very difficult. But again, what you said, and just like to our organization, to us simply we are from the same organization. And like by how we have written this, the letter to the minister there, this sort of activities must be done, and let me point this out.
There is very important fact.
This might be pretty symbolic to almost end this session. I hope it's not.
I think it's okay.
Well, come on, please. The word is yours, and then I want, after you had your contribution to the debate, I would like to ask all three of you to say a final remark to also the students in this room that will visit India and that are following the minor, and all other students that are not, but maybe want to follow in the next years. Like a final message, why India? But first your remark. Go ahead.
Let's talk about data, because I think it's very nice to talk about gender inequality in India, and some of the states are not doing good. But look at our neighbor China. For the last 20 years, they had one-child policy, and it's also patriarchal society, and the gender balance is terrible.
They even have a problem to find a groom. But sometimes, being a democratic country, everything is available and to see what mess is around. But sometimes, in a closed system, things are not visible. So I think let's close that topic there. Let me put it on democracy. I think what is important is, democracy is no guarantee for good governance. Democracy only provides the legitimacy to the government, and people get what.
So democracy is not only the 900 million people going to vote, and then we
exactly.
But the democracy is that women should have the chance, when they are educated, they can speak for themselves. They have the chance and the platform. They can create a platform for themselves to speak.
And that's what
even to push. If they cannot get it from the politicians, they go to the courts. That's the nice thing about India. I always say, whatever happens,
exactly.
Whatever happens, in the end, there are the institutions and the courts. There are many lower courts that are corrupt, but in the end, the higher courts are completely clean.
Exactly.
And then even the government, they lose one battle after the other in the courts.
Yeah. And the judiciary is a very strong pillar. You see, India works on 3.5 pillars. So we have legislation or parliamentary system, you have judiciary, and you have executive, that's a cabinet, and the media, which is half or fourth pillar, you could say. And I think they are pretty independent to each other, and they have all the right to say what they want to say, and they can go against to each other. And I think that is the biggest strength of India. And I would say it is not a perfect democracy, no, certainly not. But we are going there, again, inch by inch, millimeter by millimeter. But it moved from 90% literacy to 75% literacy. In last 10 years, it has lifted 271 million people out of the poverty. I think this is amazing numbers. And I think more than thousands of old laws from 18th century and 19th centuries have been scrapped, and the laws have been modified. India has committed to sustainable development goals, which are 17 sustainable development goals, according to Paris Agreement. In last 10 years, India made tremendous progress in renewable energy and application in solar, wind, and it has commitment to do that, you know, in coming years.
Very hopeful trends. Thank you, Pramod, for your contribution. Fons, now the word is yours, and afterwards Mr. Rob Sitalden can end. He has the final, hopefully he still has a nice story for us.
Yeah. Well, just to continue 1 second on what he said about the law and the court. Because in India there is a problem with the LGBT. According to the courts, there was a law against homosexual relations. And there was a court that said in 2011, this is not according to the constitution. People should be equal. And then for 3 years there was not a problem for homosexual relations. And then the High Court said, no, it is against the constitution, so it was forbidden against homosexual. So they went in the courts, and in the courts, and in 2018, in October, the highest court decided everybody is free to choose the identity that he or she wants, and the relationship with he or she wants. And now, so they don't have yet marriage, same-sex marriage, but LGBT is free in India. Millimeter by millimeter, but it happened. And the law that was forbidden homosexual relation was a British law from 1854. Now, what about last words for you? Because I think what the idea is to tell students what we think they should see and what they should look for in India. No?
Just a final remark, and please be brief.
Yeah, I think, I will be very brief. The Netherlands, when I came back to the Netherlands, you really see that the Netherlands is a country that does innovation, that innovates itself. Not only the products, but also our society, our government. Everything is innovated here in Holland, continuously to adapt ourselves to the new world. The Netherlands has the 4th most innovative economy in the world. And I think that if we want to keep that position in 10, 20 years' time, we can only do that when we engage today with India and China, what they are doing in R&D. It's incredible what they do. The Indians, they are very good in low-cost innovation. If they shoot a rocket to the moon, it's with 10% of the price of NASA. That's what it is.
Thank you so much. Rob, please.
To the students.
Oh, Pramod, yes.
To the students.
Brief also.
And I would steal the words from my friend Mr. Eric Niehe. Remember 4 words: democracy, demography, dynamism, and diversity. And be prepared for a new opportunities. You know, there is a chaos, but there is an order in a chaos, and you have to fight it. And there are more than enough opportunities for you, and I'm sure you will succeed.
Thank you.
No stories whatsoever, but okay. Only this. Today the world to see that about that we say we not must consume meat because we have too much CO2 emission. But maybe that the rishis from India, thousands years before, they had also this ideas because they had verboden, that they said that you must not consume meat, especially cows. And now we know that cows are producing very much CO2. So they said 10,000 years before that, listen, you must not eat meat because when you will not eat, you will not need so much cows. You see, the tape just didn't come. And then this, with the nature, just one story, what he said. There's also a myth that I've seen in when I was a child in Suriname, that when my grandfather, when he sent me to pick a flower, he said, you must ask the tree if you can pick the flower, okay? And also if you want cut a piece of the tree. And that is written so in the myth, and they were doing this, also India practicing this. And then when you ask the tree, I can cut this part, then you must wait till maybe by a breeze. If the tree will have a motion of yes, then you must do it. Otherwise, by the motion is no, do it not. Because there is God in the tree, and He will give you the permission. It's just the way to be very careful with the nature. These nice myths are. Okay, thank you very much. It's a very good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Only the 3 words. He mentioned 4 words and just came with me. I've read a book from somebody said, when you will be in India, you must have 3 things. He said, when you're in the traffic there, you must have good horn, you know, because they are very loud horn. Good horn, good brakes, and good luck. Okay.
Thank you so much. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. Thank you for your wonderful contribution. The former ambassador has written this book, and he's selling it here today as he has almost become Indian, so he's giving a 5% discount, and he will sign it. 25% discount, indeed €5 discount. For 15 euros you can take this book home, and he will even sign it. So thank you all for your attention, and have a great evening. There will also be a meet and share outside, specifically for the Kashmiri debate. That will be at the bar. In de rollenkater, what I hear now. Thank you all. Thanks for the contribution.